They cut my commission from 68% to 39% on a Tuesday morning. By Friday, I'd filed paperwork for my own firm. By Monday, their biggest client, the $8.2 million account I'd built over 8 years, was stuck in legal limbo they couldn't break. I'm Marcus Sullivan, 52 years old, and this is how I learned that 28 years of relationships beats a Harvard MBA every single time. Let me back up to that Tuesday morning. I walked into Jonathan's office holding a lukewarm Dunkin' coffee and yesterday's Wall Street Journal, thinking it was just another weekly check-in. Jonathan Hartley, 38 years old, CEO who still thought PowerPoint decks could change the world. Next to his MacBook sat a printed commission sheet with red ink bleeding across the top. Draft adjustments, it said in bold letters. My name was right there, Marcus Sullivan, next to numbers that made my stomach drop. Let me break down the math for you. Last quarter, our firm brought in $12 million total revenue. My deals? $8.2 million of that? That's 68% of everything we build. The commission pool was $1.2 million for the quarter. Standard practice, 10% of revenue goes to business development. I should have gotten $816,000, 68% of that pool, because I generated 68% of the revenue. The sheet on Jonathan's desk, $468,000. That's 39%. They were shorting me $348,000 per quarter. Morning, Marcus, Jonathan said without looking up. Still typing, probably responding to some LinkedIn thought leader post about disrupting traditional industries. Need to run something by you real quick. I stared at that sheet. 28 years in this business, built half their client relationships from scratch, and this is what I got. Is this a mistake? He finally looked up, that fake startup smile plastered across his face. Nope. Legal's just cleaning up some contract language, smoothing out gaps before final disbursements. Translation, they were buying time to figure out how to screw me legally while keeping their biggest revenue generator from walking. Oh, and Marcus, he added, like it was nothing, we're reallocating tech core industries. You'll be co-managing with Jessica now. She's got great energy with the younger executives there. Jessica Martinez, 29 years old, MBA from Wharton, and daddy's connections got her in the door. She thought LinkedIn posts and networking brunches counted as client relationship management. Tech core was my crown jewel, $8.2 million annually, 8 years of relationship building, zero drama. I knew their CEO's kids' names and their CFO's golf handicap. I nodded slowly. Right. Great energy. Then I set my coffee down on his desk and walked out. Didn't say another word. Back at my desk, I did something I'd never done in 28 years. I opened my laptop and started researching how to compete against my own company. First, I sent 2 emails. One to my lawyer about contract language disputes. The other to TechCore's COO about scheduling a confidential call that week. Then I updated my Slack status to Do Not Disturb and started thinking. At 52, with 2 kids in college and a mortgage, most people would take the hit and keep quiet. That's what Jonathan was counting on. He figured I was too close to retirement to rock the boat, too invested in the status quo to walk away, too risk-averse to start over. He was wrong on all counts. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my wife Sarah. Married 25 years, she knows when I'm processing something big. She poured herself wine and waited. They cut your commission? She asked, reading my face. 68% of revenue, 39% of commission. They're giving TechCore to Jessica Martinez. Sarah took a long sip. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm too old to start over and too experienced to be cheated. She smiled. Then she got serious. Marcus, we've got Sophie's med school tuition due in 6 months, the mortgage, your father's care facility costs. I know, and you're 52. Most guys your age are counting down to retirement, not starting wars with their employers. I looked at her across the table. We'd built this life together, the house in Westchester, college funds, retirement savings, all of it tied to a steady paycheck and benefits I'd earned through nearly 3 decades of grinding. Most guys my age haven't spent 28 years building relationships that actually matter, I said. Jonathan thinks he can replace that with a 29-year-old MBA and a social media strategy. Sarah poured herself more wine. How long have you been planning this? About 4 hours. She laughed. Then you better start planning faster. That's when I knew she was with me. By Thursday, I had a plan. By Friday afternoon, I'd filed paperwork for an LLC, Sullivan Strategic Consulting. Nothing flashy, just professional enough to pass scrutiny. I used my niece Melissa's name on the incorporation documents and rented a P.O. box in Delaware. The office came next. One room above a dry cleaner in Midtown Manhattan. No windows, stained carpet, outlets that buzzed when you plugged anything in. Rent was $1,800 a month pocket change compared to what they were stealing from me quarterly, but it was mine. I bought a folding table, a decent laptop, and a coffee maker that actually worked. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I wrote my resignation letter, kept it in my desk drawer, undated, waiting for the right moment. The weekend gave me time to think through the nuclear option I'd been avoiding. TechCore Industries wasn't just my biggest client, they were the firm's biggest client. And I'd handled something specific 18 months ago that might just be the key to everything. That nuclear option was sitting in TechCore's contract renewal from 18 months ago. Back when Jonathan was off playing golf with investors in Arizona, I'd handled the annual contract renewal myself. Standard stuff mostly, but I'd slipped in one clause that seemed routine at the time. All contract amendments and point of contact changes must be approved in writing by the designated account manager. That designated account manager was me. So when they reassigned TechCore to Jessica, the contract couldn't actually move forward without my written approval or a formal POC change request, which required 90 days notice and client consent. The whole $8.2 million annual deal was stuck in legal limbo, and they had no idea why. Monday morning came fast. I showed up to work like nothing had changed, grabbed my usual coffee, nodded at the receptionist. But I'd already started making calls over the weekend. Not emails or LinkedIn messages, actual phone calls. To people I'd known for 15, 20 years. CEOs who remembered when I helped them land their first major deals. CFOs who trusted my judgment because I'd never steered them wrong. The first call was to Robert Thompson, CEO of a mid-market logistics firm. I'd helped him structure his first major contract back in 2009. Marcus, haven't heard from you in what, 6 months? Been busy, Robert. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. I'm going independent. Silence on the other end. Then, about damn time. You know how many times I've called your office and gotten transferred to some kid who didn't know the difference between EBITDA and a P&L statement? I might have heard something about that. When can we talk? I've got 2 projects I've been sitting on because I didn't trust anyone at your firm except you. The second call went to Maria Santos, CFO at a construction company I'd worked with since 2012. Same story. The third call was to David Park, who ran procurement for a tech company. By Sunday night, I had 3 client meetings lined up for the following week, plus 2 more prospects waiting for me to send them my new LLC details. Turns out, 28 years of not screwing people over builds something stronger than a company letterhead. Tuesday morning brought the first crack in their system. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing some proposals, when I heard raised voices from the conference room. Through the glass, I could see Jessica pacing around, gesturing at her laptop screen. Jonathan was there too, along with 2 people from legal. The TechCore renewal had hit a wall. I kept working, pretending not to notice. Around 11 a.m., Jonathan's assistant walked over to my desk. Marcus, could you join the TechCore discussion in conference room B? Sure thing. I walked in to find 4 very confused faces staring at contract documents spread across the table. Marcus, Jonathan said, trying to keep his voice level, we're having some issues with the TechCore renewal. Legal says there's a clause about POC changes that's causing delays. I looked at the contract. Oh, right. Standard language. All POC changes need written approval from the current account manager. That would be me. Right, Jessica said, so we just need you to sign off on the transition. I picked up the papers, pretended to review them. Well, there's also the 90-day notice requirement. And TechCore's legal team has to approve the new POC before we can process the change. The room went quiet. How long does that usually take? Jonathan asked. Depends. Could be 90 days, could be 6 months. Sometimes clients prefer to just wait until the next renewal cycle rather than deal with the paperwork mid-contract. I could practically see the math happening in Jonathan's head. TechCore was worth $8.2 million annually. If the renewal stalled for 6 months, they'd lose millions in Q1 and Q2 revenue. What if we just leave you as the POC for now? Jessica suggested. Just until the paperwork clears? That could work, I said. but I'd need to stay on as the primary relationship manager to maintain contract compliance. Jessica could shadow the account, learn the ropes. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He knew I had them cornered, but he couldn't prove it was intentional. "Let's table this for now," he said. "Marcus, can you reach out to TechCore today and explain the situation?" "Absolutely." I walked back to my desk and immediately called TechCore's general counsel. "Hey Jim, Marcus Sullivan here. We're having some internal restructuring, and I wanted to make sure we're not creating any contract complications for you guys." "What kind of complications?" "They want to transition your account to a new manager, but our legal team flagged some issues with the POC change process. Might be smoother to just wait until the next renewal cycle." "How long is that?" "Your current contract runs through December." "So, about 10 months. Marcus, level with me. Is there something going on over there we should know about?" I paused. "Jim, you've known me for 8 years. Have I ever given you bad advice?" "Never." "Then trust me on this one. December renewal will be cleaner for everyone." That afternoon, TechCore's CEO sent an email to Jonathan. They wanted to delay any POC changes until the next renewal cycle. They preferred working with their current account manager, me, to avoid any service disruptions. Jonathan forwarded the email to me without comment. 3 weeks in, I made another call. This one to Trevor Garcia, a finance guy I'd worked with at 2 previous companies. Had a neck tattoo and 0 patience for corporate politics. "Marcus? Dude, I heard rumors you went independent. Thinking about expanding the operation. You interested? If it means getting away from these MBA kids who think Excel formulas are magic spells, absolutely. When do I start?" Trevor showed up the next day with his own chair and a whiteboard. "Brought this in case you need to map out world domination," he said, setting up the board in our tiny office above the dry cleaner. "What's the first order of business?" he asked. I handed him a folder. "Set up proper payroll. We're going to start hiring people who actually know what they're doing." That's when I knew we were building something real. We worked nights and weekends. I paid Trevor through an old business account I'd kept dormant since the 90s. During the day, I was still showing up at the old firm, smiling through strategy meetings and nodding when Jessica presented my ideas as her own. But underneath, we were building something that actually worked. The calls kept coming. Former colleagues who'd heard whispers. Clients who wanted to know about my consulting work. Industry contacts who were tired of dealing with account managers young enough to be their kids. By week 4, I had enough interest to start making real plans. Month 2 brought Mel Patterson, senior data analyst from my old firm, 15 years of experience, tired of being managed by kids who couldn't read a P&L statement properly. "Marcus, I heard you're building something real. You still hiring?" I sent her the onboarding folder without hesitation. "When can you start?" "How about now? I've got my laptop and my resignation letter." By month 3, we had 6 people crammed into that tiny office above the dry cleaner. All experienced professionals, all fed up with being undervalued, all ready to work for someone who understood what real business looked like. No ping-pong tables or kombucha on tap, just coffee that worked and people who knew their craft. That's when everything exploded at the old firm. Monday morning, 10:15 a.m. I was reviewing client proposals when the mass email hit the entire company. Subject line, Strategic Partnership Update, from TechCore Industries. After careful consideration, TechCore Industries has decided not to renew our partnership with the firm. This decision reflects our commitment to working with partners who prioritize relationship integrity and communication transparency. We wish them success in their future endeavors. I leaned back in my chair and watched it happen through the office glass. The floor around me went dead silent for exactly 5 seconds. Then panic hit like a fire alarm. Jessica was already pacing by the coffee station, white as printer paper. She'd been bragging about her TechCore relationship at some networking event last week. Now she looked like she was watching her career implode in real time. One of the junior account managers sprinted across the hall with her laptop open, probably trying to figure out what went wrong. The guy from finance was standing at his desk, staring at his screen like it was showing him lottery numbers he'd missed by 1 digit. Jonathan slammed his door shut. Through the glass, I could see him on the phone, probably with legal, trying to figure out how $8.2 million just walked out the door. I opened Slack and typed a simple message. Experience retains clients, not energy. Hit send. The message disappeared in 30 seconds. Company policy: all internal communications monitored during crisis situations. So I tried again, this time with an attachment, a screenshot of the commission sheet showing my 68% revenue contribution highlighted in yellow, with a note. This is what 8.2 NM in relationship building looks like. That one lasted about a minute before vanishing too. Then my computer froze. Password reset required. 10 minutes later, my keycard stopped working when I tried to get to the restroom. The lights stayed red, dead. I was packing my desk when Olivia from HR showed up, barely 25, nervous as hell, holding a manila folder like it contained anthrax. "Marcus, can I walk you out?" I stood up, handed her an envelope I'd been carrying for 2 weeks. My formal resignation, effective immediately. That envelope has contact information for my new firm. You'll want to forward that to legal. She blinked. "You're already operational?" "Fully operational. 6 people, 3 major clients lined up. Growing fast." I walked out past Jessica, who ducked into a conference room the second she saw me coming. Past Jonathan's closed door where muffled shouting was still going on. Into the elevator and onto the street. The air felt different, real. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Text messages, voicemails, LinkedIn DMs, even a few calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Half from former colleagues asking what the hell just happened. The other half from clients asking if the rumors were true. One message stood out. From TechCore's CEO. "Heard about your transition. We'd love to discuss continuity arrangements. Are you available this week?" By Wednesday, their entire executive team was sitting across from me and Trevor in our cramped office above the dry cleaner. The place still smelled like starch and floor cleaner, but nobody seemed to care. "Marcus, we've worked together for 8 years, their CEO said. "We trust your judgment, not your company's letterhead. What can you do for us going forward?" I handed him a proposal Trevor and I had worked on until 2 a.m. 3-year contract. $13.5 million annually. Same service level you're used to, but with a team that actually answers their phones. They didn't even negotiate the rates. Signed it that Friday. Word spread fast in our industry. By month 4, we had 12 people and a waiting list for new hires. The team was a mix of experienced professionals who'd been pushed aside by younger management and hungry mid-career people who wanted to work somewhere that respected competence over connections. Trevor brought in real coffee one morning. Not the office swill, but 7A cup stuff from that place on 43rd Street. "What's the occasion?" Mel asked. "We just crossed $500K in quarterly revenue," Trevor said. "Marcus doesn't celebrate, so I'm doing it for him." I looked at the numbers. He was right. 4 months in, tiny office above a dry cleaner, and we'd already built something that was outperforming half the boutique firms in the city. "You know what our margin is on that?" I asked. Trevor grinned. 73%. Your old firm was running 31% last quarter. That's when I realized we weren't just building a company. We were building something that actually worked. But I wasn't done with the old firm yet. The Industry Leadership Forum was coming up in 6 weeks. Big annual conference where all the major firms showed off their latest innovations and thought leadership. The old company had booked the same corner booth they'd used for 5 years, prime real estate right by the main entrance. Except this year, I'd bought the rights to that exact spot. I'd used the LLC, run it through a vendor I'd worked with before, and secured it 3 months in advance. They probably assumed it was on auto-renewal, just like everything else they took for granted. It wasn't. Friday morning, conference day. I showed up early wearing my best Navy suit and no name tag. Our booth was already set up by the display company I'd hired. Clean lines, professional signage, and one simple message across the top. 30 years of relationships can't be disrupted. No QR codes, no tech demos, no branded stress balls, just a table with information about what real revenue sharing looked like and mock commission statements showing how we treated our people. Trevor was setting up our materials when the first attendees started filtering in. These weren't 25-year-old startup founders looking for the next big disruption. This was an industry conference, people with gray hair and mortgages who understood the difference between trends and fundamentals. "You ready for this?" Trevor asked. I watched the old firm's team walking across the lobby. Jonathan in his startup casual blazer, Jessica in her networking outfit, and Brandon trailing behind looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. They were smiling and chatting until they saw our booth. Jonathan stopped walking completely, just stared for a full 10 seconds, processing what he was looking at. His smile didn't fade, it collapsed, like someone had cut the strings holding it up. Then his eyes found me, standing off to the side, shaking hands with a potential client. His face went pale. Not angry, pale, defeated pale. Like a man realizing he'd underestimated the wrong person at exactly the wrong time. I walked over to Jonathan, picked up one of our information packets from the table, and handed it to him without saying a word. He took it like it was radioactive evidence in a criminal case. The photographer from Industry Weekly happened to be walking by and caught the exact moment a young CEO in startup casual holding a document that showed how real firms treat their talent. "Interesting booth location," Jonathan said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Prime real estate," I replied. "Amazing what becomes available when you plan ahead." Jessica was hanging back, pretending to check her phone, but I could see her trying to read our materials from 10 feet away. Brandon had already disappeared, probably to find a coffee stand where he could hide until this was over. The booth worked exactly like I'd hoped. Senior executives stopped, studied our materials, and asked thoughtful questions. These weren't kids looking for the next disruptive platform. These were people who understood that business relationships take decades to build and seconds to destroy. By noon, that photo was on LinkedIn. No caption necessary, just the image of disruption meeting experience and experience winning. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. Industry forums picked it up. Twitter turned it into a conversation about ageism in consulting. Even Reddit found it, and none of us had posted anything. The old firm tried to respond with a statement about maintaining professional standards and fostering innovation. It backfired completely. People just shared the photo with comments like, "This is why experience matters." And finally, someone called out the youth worship. But the real fireworks came 2 days later. I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just a Dropbox link and a message. "Thought you should see this." Inside was a folder labeled Project Phoenix. 47 documents, all internal strategy memos from my old firm. Meeting notes, talking points, escalation timelines, everything centered around discrediting me professionally after they realized I'd left with TechCore. They had scripts to feed industry reporters, client call logs marked with reputation management tags, even a draft social media campaign about my inability to adapt to modern business practices. Under risk assessment, someone had written, "Strengths client trust, strategic thinking, anticipates moves 23 steps ahead. Weaknesses overconfident in traditional methods. Threats more influential than initially calculated. Age may work against him in recruiting younger talent." I forwarded the files to my team. Trevor's response came back in 30 seconds. Holy shit. They documented their entire character assassination plan. Mel just sent a gif of a dumpster fire spinning in slow motion. Instead of posting everything immediately, we did what experienced professionals do. We used our networks. Quiet conversations with industry contacts. Discreet mentions to journalist friends who'd covered workplace issues before. A week later, the Wall Street Journal ran a feature story. The Gray Ceiling, How Age Bias Costs Companies Their Best Talent. Our story was the centerpiece, but they'd found 6 other similar cases across different industries. The journalist had done real reporting, interviewed former employees, analyzed the Project Phoenix documents, and laid out exactly how firms like Jonathan's were systematically pushing out experienced professionals to cut costs and modernize their image. They quoted the risk assessment documents directly. The files reveal a calculated effort to undermine a senior employee's reputation rather than address legitimate compensation disputes. The final paragraph included a quote from me. "They didn't lose me because I couldn't adapt to change. They lost me because they assumed experience was less valuable than energy." In business, trust and relationships compound like interest, and I'd been earning both for 30 years. That Monday, I got calls from 3 different headhunters. Not for jobs, they wanted to discuss my team's availability for major consulting projects. Tuesday brought a contract offer from a Fortune 500 company that had read the journal piece. Full corporate restructuring project, 18-month timeline, $3.2 million budget. They specifically requested senior-level strategic guidance from professionals with proven track records. Wednesday, the settlement check arrived. No note, no explanation, just a bank draft from my old firm's legal department. $348,000 in back commission plus contract penalties. They'd calculated it down to the penny exactly what they'd shorted me over the past year. I stared at that check for a long time. That money was supposed to be my daughter's medical school fund. Sophie's tuition, our security, the nest egg Sarah and I had been building for 25 years. Then I made a decision that surprised even me. I split it evenly among my entire team as a bonus, 19,333s each for 18 people. Didn't tell them where it came from until after the deposits cleared. Mel messaged me at 9 p.m. "Marcus, there's 19,333s in my account. What is this?" "Year-end bonus. You earned it." "This is the settlement money, isn't it? Split 18 ways. Seemed fair." "Marcus, this was your money, your family's money." "No, Mel, this was our money. We built this together. That's what real leadership looks like. You don't hoard the win, you share it." With what was left over, I did something symbolic. Bought the old conference table from my former firm's office liquidation sale. Heavy oak slab, scarred from years of broken promises and fake strategy sessions. We had it refinished completely, sanded away all the damage, gave it a perfect gloss, and set it up in our new conference room. Then, underneath where nobody could see it, I carved 6 words with my pocket knife. He remembered everything. So did we. Today, 8 months later, we're 18 people, 9 major clients, 2-year waiting list for new projects, no ping pong tables, no kombucha, no bullshit about disrupting industries, just experienced professionals who got tired of being undervalued by kids who think an MBA equals wisdom. That conference booth photo still gets shared every few months, usually with captions like experience versus energy or why you don't mess with 30 years of relationships. I keep a copy on my desk, not as a trophy but as a reminder. At 52, I learned something important. You're never too old to start over when you've got 3 decades of relationships backing you up. And you're definitely never too experienced to teach young executives that disruption works both ways. My old firm? They're still around, but barely. Lost 3 more major clients after the Journal article. Half their senior staff left for competitors. Jonathan's LinkedIn shows he's exploring new opportunities in strategic leadership. Translation: he's unemployed. Jessica landed at a startup that folded 6 months later. Brandon went back to business school. But here's the thing, I don't think about them much anymore. Revenge was never the point. Building something real was. We've got a new office now. Windows, carpet that doesn't smell like industrial chemicals. Conference rooms that fit more than 6 people. But we kept the original folding table from above the dry cleaner. It sits in my office as a reminder of where we started. The moral of this story? Trust compounds over time. Relationships compound over time. Reputation compounds over time. And when someone tries to steal what you've earned, sometimes the best response isn't revenge. It's showing them what real business looks like. The best part? 3 months ago, we hired our first intern. Kid's 22, fresh out of college, eager to learn. I spend an hour every week teaching him what I wish someone had taught me at his age. How to build relationships that last. How to keep your word. How to treat people fairly, even when nobody's watching. Because that's how you build something that matters. One relationship at a time, one honest deal at a time, one person at a time. At 52, I finally understand what my father meant when he told me, "Son, your reputation is the only thing you truly own. Guard it carefully because it takes a lifetime to build and a moment to lose." I've been building mine for 30 years, and I'm just getting started.